I'm curious, you spent time here in London at the London Business School, but you also came from that hardcore tech. And let me just say, folks, if you're an aeronautical engineer, like that's real stuff. These people know the details, fluid dynamics, it's like real stuff. How did you find, having both of those tools in your arsenal? Do you think that's what's given you the edge over the years?
Oh, absolutely. It was one of the smartest things for me to do was to do my undergraduate work at a school like Purdue in aeronautical and astronautical engineering. And to your point, fluid dynamics, propulsion, some people like to call it rocket science, orbital mechanics, structural analysis, all of these tools have been immensely useful to me in my career in terms of understanding how technology works. I started off as an engineer and then migrated over to the business side, which is what prompted me to decide to go to the London Business School. And in particular, I focused on corporate finance. I really wanted to understand, particularly, especially as an investor, I've been an investor since I was 16 years old, I wanted to understand how assets were valued. And I think this is one of the most critical aspects of being successful as an investor is understanding the value, not the share price, but the value of the underlying asset and whether or not we're investing at a good, reasonable, fair valuation or if we're investing in a grossly overvalued asset. And the time that I spent in London working on that developed an amazing skill set in terms of what I do now, which is an investment analyst. And that helps me and my subscribers make a lot of money.
And one thing I just noticed is you also got that international experience. I guess I do as well. And, that must have also changed the game, just to be living in a different place, different markets, different ideas. I mean, you spent a couple of years here in London, I think from 03 to 04. What was that like?
It was the absolute best thing I could have ever done was to get outside of the United States. And I first moved to Tokyo, Japan in 1997. And I spent the better part of 2 decades, most of my adult life, in fact, has been spent living and working overseas. And I've done work in business in 65 different countries around the world. I've had global positions where I was really leading an overall business unit in business development. Probably the best thing we can do in terms of personal development is to spend several years living and working in a country that's vastly different than our own. It just helps expand our worldview and think differently. It certainly helped with my creative thinking and to look at companies, technologies, people, cultures from entirely different perspectives.
And what are your fondest memories of London?
Oh, pints of good beer at the local pub, definitely. No, I had an absolute blast at the London Business School. Being right in central London, absolutely the finest teachers that I could, dream of being able to spend such quality time with in terms of corporate finance. I think they're the best in the world. I love the parks. My wife and I tended to, walk through the parks on the weekends, and we even enjoyed the ballet and opera, also within walking distance. It's an extraordinary city. It really is.